Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about the mental change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled to be talking to you today. We are going to have a really interesting conversation about money management and what is a daily money manager. Perfect timing when taxes were just due might be something that you want to consider for yourself and or a loved one. But prior to doing that, I'm just going to do some housekeeping stuff here first, like I always do. So first, if you liked our opening music, it's called Clarion Call by the Mark Arneson Band. And I am just so grateful for them for allowing us to use their music. It's a beautiful song. You can download it on any of your favorite music platforms. And then also, for those of you that are new, you might not know who Alzheimer Speaks is or what we're about. Bottom line, we're about sound information, not just sound bites. We want to have real conversations with everyday people. You know, in the trenches, there's so many of us out there that have great stories to share that can help others. So reach out to me if you want to share your story. Coming up in May, in fact, May 12th, you might want to mark your calendars because the Central Minnesota Dementia Community Action Network team is going to have a summit, which is going to feature Dr. Dale Brennison, and it's free. And it's like a 3-hour summit. And so check that out. I think that'll be really valuable information for people to have. For those of you that aren't familiar with Dementia Map, again, go to dementiamap.com. That is a project between Dave Wiedrich with the Memory Cafe Directory and myself. We want to connect people to services, products, and tools, and not just people, you know, families, but business professionals as well. There's so much information out there that people need to know, and they don't know how to find it. So we've got 150 categories. There's an events page, there's blog, there's a glossary, just tons of information. It's free, and you don't have to give any personal data as well. And then a lot of people are looking for support groups. And so I also want to mention a couple of them that I do. Arthur Senior Care is still sponsoring Arthur's Memory Cafe, and we were like the first memory cafe here in the US, and I'm so appreciative of them. We do them twice a month on the second and the fourth Wednesday of each month, and that starts at 1 o'clock Central Time. It is virtual, so anybody in the world can participate. And then Brookdale North Oaks does an in-person Caregiver Connect with Respite. Though the last couple of months we have been meeting virtually. In May, we are going to start again, but we meet the last Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. So virtually you can participate yet this month. And if you're in Minnesota, feel free to join us. Also, I have to give a shout out to Maud's Awards. They have opening applications right now. They are awarding $5,000 to individuals and $25,000 to organizations who have already made a huge contribution in the dementia field. So feel free to sign up for that at maudsawards.org. And then they just launched on Friday, Maud's Ventures, which has 3 different categories, and they want to give seed money of $50,000 to $100,000 to organizations for 3 specific categories. So check that out at maudsventures.org. We are going to hear from the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner as they highlight the Footbar Walker, and we will be right back.
I love the Footbar Walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest, there are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the Footbar Walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Okay, we are back and it is time to talk money management, and we have a pro with us. Emily Lutz is the founder and president of Liberty Paperwork Solutions. And who doesn't need help with their paperwork? Liberty Paperwork Solutions is a company that provides daily money management for individuals that can benefit from assistance with their paying bills and paperwork management. Well, Emily, I am so excited to have you with us today. Paperwork can be so overwhelming on so many levels to everybody who has their capacities because life is so busy. And then as things change, it could be our eyesight, it could be a zillion different things. Where we need help. I know it's hard sometimes for people to reach out for that help. And so I'm anxious to talk to you about this process and see if we can get people to feel comfortable and confident in sharing some of their most personal information with a stranger. It's hard to do that within your family. And yet sometimes a third party is, I would imagine, is the way to go, especially for someone who's very private. So first, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
Before I go into my line of questions, I always like to ask you if you've been personally touched by dementia in your, personal family or circle of friends.
Sure. Yes. My grandmother had dementia, and that's actually what got me interested in doing what I do, because I saw it was a service that she really needed. And now a good portion of our clients actually have dementia, our older clients, and so we're around it a lot. Sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's something that's a difficult diagnosis for anyone to deal with, and to have to start giving up some of the tasks that you've done all your life. People always question. I saw that when I was in real estate about moving. They didn't want to be dependent. They wanted to maintain their independence. But I really see your service as leveraging their independence and letting them still be part of the process and in control, but yet not having that weight of, did I make that payment on time? And all of those types of things. What do you hear from families, when they knock on your door in terms of money managers? I would imagine first they're asking, what exactly do you do?
No, that's exactly right. So daily money management it's a service that helps a person manage their daily financial responsibilities. So that includes their bill paying, tracking expenses, budgeting, and really it allows them to stay financially organized. And what you said, you hit right on it, which is people are terrified of losing their independence. Mm-hmm. They spent their whole childhood trying to get it. And now they've had it, and it's nothing that they ever want to risk. And what they think is, by taking on a service, any service that assists them, they think they're losing it, when actually the service, getting a little help somewhere, allows them to keep a large portion of their independence. So that's something that we tell people, because it is especially it's a relatively newer service as services go. A lot of people haven't heard of it, so it's when it's something new like that, they are immediately cautious and suspicious, and they're just not familiar with it.
Are you a scammer? How do I know you're not a scammer? I mean, there's so many of those things out there. What can you say to that?
So I actually love when they ask me that, and I want them to ask every professional or anyone who calls them that's in their life, because that should be the first thing that they think about. So right, by helping them with their finances, we get access, and and that's why really what's most important with any professional that you start to deal with is the trust factor. And basically, a lot of our clients are through referrals for just that reason. Someone else who's been working with for a while, a trusted person, then refers us. And you would check credentials. You would check if there's association that they're a part of. You could actually just do a search on the internet to see if a name comes up with something negative written about it. You could see if they're insured, if they're bonded. There's steps that are taken, but at the end of the day, there is a little leap that still has to be taken. What we recommend actually is that there's someone else also overseeing us. We don't want to work in a black hole. Again, for the trust factor. So if there's a power of attorney, or maybe a trusted relative that they want to also oversee us, and maybe get a summary of the activity we've done, or have access also to the finances, then we encourage that.
Well, that says a lot right there in and of itself, that you're not afraid to be viewed, and for people to ask questions and make sure that there's that trust there, because we're in a scary world these days with scammers, and people can come off like, oh, I would never do that to you. Of course, I'm your friend. I'm your confidant. I'll take care of you. But you've got a formal business. You're, like you said, you're licensed and bonded. That's huge in and of itself. How do you deal? Is it kind of a black and white in terms of how you deal with people? Or I would imagine there are some people that would like to still maybe be part of the bill paying process and not just totally hand it over. Can you accommodate that?
Right. So absolutely. So if someone has been the bill payer their entire lives, and even though they might be starting to get a little confused and struggling with it, they very much still want to do it. That was part of their routine. So we sit with them, and we do it together, and they feel good about it. And really what we spend a lot of time doing during those visits is reassuring them. So a bill is paid, they want to make them nervous that, is the right amount, is it being paid on time? So that's actually a big part of it. We reassure them when we leave, they feel a little more relaxed about the whole experience. Yeah.
I love that you'll accommodate that, because I think that's so important from a dignity and pride standpoint.
Absolutely right.
And again, that trust, and then you're really, I would imagine, kind of a friendship develops in a way as well, where they've got another set of eyes checking in on them and talking with them, and having real conversations, with them about what's important in their life. And I would think that would be comforting to family members as well, because I hear so often, oh my gosh, I haven't seen mom or dad in a while. I live out of state, and I went there. The whole dining room table is a stack of bills, and there's late notices, there's, threats, stuff is going to get turned off. Or in reverse, I've seen them say, she is like writing checks to like a zillion charities all of a sudden. She always had one or two, but now it's everybody and their brother is kind of knocking at the door. Are those common scenarios that you run across when people call?
Absolutely. Yes. It's huge. And exactly what you said. Sometimes when you do have someone in that's performing the service, they are their second set of eyes. So they can, a lot of times the adult children will say to us, when they do, everyone these days they have a lot on their plate. Mm-hmm. And when they do find the time to visit, they want to spend the time visiting instead of rifling through those piles that now, mind you, we all have piles. So, but worrying that and spending the time worrying that they're going to catch all the bills and find them if they're spread all over. And yes, that's a very common scenario. Sure.
Well, and do you still, and maybe this varies from person to person, but do bills still go to their house, or do they come to you so that they don't get lost in the house? Because I've seen some kids go, I've just had to have everything redirected to my house because we don't know where they are. You know, we wanted to set stuff up online, but we don't even know what everything is, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it depends, you know, there's the whole range of scenarios. So there's people when we go and sit with them, they're still doing their bills. We ask that they collect the mail and save it for us. Even if they think it might be junk, we're happy to look at the junk and reassure them that it is junk. And they get in that habit, you know, and therefore things tend to get less lost, and we can do it together. Then there's the people who are very comfortable giving up the whole thing. Maybe it was their spouse who had paid the bills and who's no longer able to, and they themselves, it's not their thing. They just want to know that it's being done. And so a lot of those people, yes, their bills do come directly to us. And a couple scenarios, we can actually take those bills and then go and sit with them and do it with them, or we can actually take care of it ourselves, pay their bills online, and then produce a report and show what's been paid.
Okay. Well, that's nice. And when you were talking about collecting the mail and putting it aside, you know, to be able to meet with you and go through, I mean, that gives somebody purpose. It says I'm still part of the process. And yeah, I would think takes a lot of the worry out. And again, gives them a reason to be connected, which sometimes that isolation is such a big tipping point for people.
That's true.
That in itself is huge. And then when you said, well, the husband always used to pay the bills. I mean, I've heard that scenario a zillion times. Same with driving. Well, I never needed a driver's license because my husband always was the one that drove. Those are probably the two really solid lines that I've heard for years over and over, way before I got into this space. But when I was in real estate, was very, very common. But the worry of, did I pay that bill, especially when someone starts having, you know, some memory issues there. I found so many people were paying bills multiple times because they weren't doing it, you know, they weren't going online to check their bank to see because they didn't know how to do the techie stuff. And so they would just write another check because they didn't make a note on the bill itself that it was paid, you know, and they didn't want to wait until their next statement came from the bank. And so, you know, that can be a big entanglement in and of itself. Do you run across people who have been scammed? You know, maybe they're still doing emails. I know I get probably 10 a day going, you know, thanks from the Geek Squad, you know, for your renewal of $800 or whatever. And, you know, you look up in the email and of course it's not the Geek Squad. But there's so many of those types of things, or things that come in the mail as well. And I've heard of people even coming to the door trying to collect money. Do you run across those situations as well?
So let me tell you this. I have actually spoken with a large amount of scammers because when I'm sitting with a client, they'll call. And they pick up the phone and I can tell right away and I speak to them. So the scamming has been, it's always been pretty big, but in year after year, it's exploded. And it actually, that's a big reason that people seek us out, is when all of a sudden they see mom and dad is starting to be scammed and they just need someone to come and oversee it. So that is huge. Yes, all the time. And the scammers can reach them in multiple ways. So that's how you have to kind of deal with each one. And a common one that I have a client now that it's constant. They mail a letter that says in the letter, please call us. There's an outstanding bill, please call us. And that's a trigger for a lot of people. They very much want to have all their bills paid and up to date. It makes them nervous. And it doesn't say to send money, right? It just says, give us a call. And they do. And that's where the problems begin. That's when
And now they're on the list.
they're in. And the scammer continuously calls, and all of a sudden it's a familiar voice. And like you said, a lot of time their lives are a little bit isolating. They can't get out a lot, and they feel like they feel like this person is their friend. And it's a tricky thing. The computer, which they're not a lot of older people that didn't have a computer growing up, they're not familiar with it. They're told that they have to get virus protection. I see that all the time. And that triggers them. They don't quite understand it, but they told they need it. They hear people talking about it. If they don't have virus protection, you can even say to them, why do you think you need virus protection? What are you protecting? They're not really sure, but they think they should send $1,000 so that someone's watching. It's sad, actually, because when they realize they've been scammed, it's really it makes them a different person. It makes them feel vulnerable, and it is a problem with their dignity. Exactly what you said. And so, right, it's some people are harassed with the phone calls. The phone calls, they just continuously call. And I have seen someone who comes to the door. We actually we have 2 clients that their families have installed Ring doorbells, and they have it coming to us. We actually monitor whenever the doorbell rings because we live locally to their parents. Yeah, it's a tough one. There's not an easy fix.
No, I had a friend who had Alzheimer's, got her diagnosis, and she was scammed. And she was always a savvy business person. And here she was at Target buying a bunch of gift cards and was instructed to not leave the site until she called them with the serial numbers. And so she bought some, and then she was standing there calling, and Target picked up on it right away and go, "You are not leaving. We're getting those cards back." She never got over it. It was so devastating. And thank God they caught it, because it was like $4,500 or $5,000 worth of gift cards.
That's shout out to Target for that one. Well done. That was
I know. It was amazing. But it hit her pride so hard.
Yeah.
That it really,
I think, the truth is, who are the I keep up on all the scams because when you actually have read about it before, it instantly clicks when you hear it, because some of them they're very clever and they're brilliant. And it's not just people with Alzheimer's.
Yep.
Doctors and lawyers are a huge percentage of the people that are scammed because they think they know enough that they're not going to fall for it. And they're brilliant. So it's not something that they should, feel like no one else gets scammed, but it is just, yeah.
It's not attacking just the people we view as being vulnerable, for sure. I mean, I have XL Energy, that's for my gas and electric, and they actually call me on the phone and it pops up as XL, and it's a scammer trying to get money out of me. Exactly. And one time I almost fell for it, and then I thought, no, I just paid that bill. But there was the threat of they were going to turn stuff off, and I'm like, if I was behind, I wouldn't have been behind that much where they would have turned me off anyways. It would have been a day or something. And so I caught it in time, and then I called XL, and the woman just, this huge sigh at XL, and she's like, "We apologize. We don't know how they're doing this, but they've cloned our phones." And it's just horrible, but it's easy to get caught because they tug on those emotions and those pride factors of, always paying your bill and being on time and things. And it's so devastating and can just make such a mess out of someone's finances. I had another friend whose mother, again, businesswoman all of her life, and they called her up wanting her to invest in a business, and it was 5,000 here and 5,000 there. And, they were trying to get a handle of it. And the person ended up, they would come and pick up the money. I mean, they were just very brazen in the whole thing. And it was just horrible. And these people are so hard to track down. And so I think protecting ourselves and our loved ones, I think is so important, because it can happen in just a heartbeat. And you're probably more on top of the scams than I am, but I've heard once you're on one list, they share them with their buddies. And so then all of a sudden you got a bunch of scammers.
No, it must be true, because when my client called that fake virus protection number, his phone exploded after that with people calling for things. So they must share it. Yeah.
If people would only do good with their, with all the scheming and the energy that they have, it's like, oh my gosh, they could make the world a great place.
Yeah.
Instead of so divisive. When a family member calls, maybe for a parent, let's say it's an adult child, how is that received? Do you find yourself kind of in the middle, or have they kind of negotiated that with their parents? Because I know that a lot of times that happens too, where the kids say, well, no, this is how it's going to work.
Right. So family dynamics are so interesting and different for every family. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the children want to take over the bill paying because they see mom or dad struggling, but the parent doesn't want them to. Mm-hmm. So we can be seen as a neutral third party. So sometimes I know we're brought in for that. Both parties are like, okay, we find this acceptable. Mm-hmm. We've been, it depends. Right. Some people call and feel us out and then try to kind of get mom and dad on board, which can take a while. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I find what happens is when we meet in person, that seems to relax everyone. When they just hear about the service in theory, it's tough. But then when they see us and they talk with us and they meet us and we're just another person, that seems to relax everyone involved. If I asked you if I could see your credit card statement, you'd say, I'm so sure about that. Because it's that's your spending habits. It's a personal thing, and we totally appreciate that, and mm-hmm. we get that, as long as there's confidentiality and that's top of mind at all times, and we show that.
When I sold real estate, I would get in kind of the thick of things, because the kids would call me in and it's time for mom to move. It was just horrible. And so I would have to have these conversations, and I actually developed community ed classes that I would do on this, about putting the person first and centered and getting everybody to understand that the kids are scared. The person themselves usually feels vulnerable, but doesn't want to say that because they don't want to lose their independence. Exactly. But it's really about molding them to say, listen, no one's out, to harm anyone here. This is really for the best interest and to make life easier and to give you more independence. And, mom, we don't like seeing you worried about this stuff all the time. We don't want you to feel vulnerable. This is a way that we can do this. But sometimes it would take some talking to do. But for me, it was a big learning experience, because I didn't, you don't know what you don't know, but I didn't realize that people were so skeptical of one another, even within families at that point. Because in the beginning, I hadn't gone through that with my own family, and, someone's trying to take advantage of someone else. And it's like, 90% of the time, that's not the case. They're just concerned. But then you do have others that do want to do it for the control and to kind of have the one up on the other siblings or whatever it might be too. And that gets, I always found that got complicated, but it was all about clear communication and making sure that the person you were serving was on board, if they had the capacity to be able to of course do that.
That was very clever. You did that. That was well done. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I agree. I think having the conversation, because I don't think either side really knows the full services that you have. until you really have that conversation, and you're kind of putting out these little fires. And I think both sides end up breathing a little bit easier after those conversations. And, trust is such a major factor in this process. You've got to have those honest conversations. And these are things we should be talking about early on. I mean, some people just aren't good with their money management, and they might be better off hiring somebody like you from the get-go and just say, I'm going to do my thing. You take care of my bills. I've got the money. I'm just not good at sitting down and paying them.
Yeah, absolutely. We have clients of all ages and all abilities, and we have a selection of clients that actually have no immediate family. They were never married, have no children, and more of them are bringing us on when they're still quite able to handle all of these things, because they want us familiar with it, so that if and when the time comes that they start to struggle, it's just a smooth continuation. So people are starting to plan ahead and think of those things, which I think is very clever.
Oh, that's brilliant, because you don't want to have, if something does happen to you and you are incapacitated, now you don't have any choice on who is brought in or what happens or how it happens. So I think that that's really, really wise and very, very smart for people to be thinking about that. And we have so many elders now that are divorced or never had kids, and they don't feel like they have that backup person. There might be conflict within the family. I know there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, not mine. And I'm like, well, you're lucky then, because most families, when it comes to money, issues pop up. That's been my experience.
Money is messy. I can tell you that. It certainly is. Yes.
What do you think in terms of building trust? What do you think are the most important factors for people to really accept handing their finances over?
It's a great question. And it's what's tricky about it is sometimes trust can be a function of time. So it's like the catch-22. Again, if a trusted person had referred, then that helps with the trust factor. But if not, it's really just a function of time. We tell people we are going to go as slowly as you want to go. We're not just going to come in there and start throwing things out and reorganizing, and we're not going to, we don't have to take over everything all at once. It can really be a slow process. So we get to know each other. And again, if they have someone else that they wouldn't mind being involved, and being able to oversee us as well, it just adds a little more of the transparency. We try to be as transparent as possible. But yeah, it's a tricky thing. I wish if I knew the answer, I would do it in a second. But yeah, trust is sometimes it just comes in time. So all of our clients are, confidential. We keep them confidential, but some tell us that they're willing to, if someone wants a reference, they'd be more than happy to speak with someone. So we do that occasionally. They ask for that. And if they feel better speaking with someone who's maybe in a similar position, who started with our services, and they can talk to them about it. So that's
that makes sense. I think one of the things for me for trust is even someone acknowledging that it's a factor in the transaction between you, because sometimes people just blow past that. And then that makes me distrust and nervous. And so just you acknowledging that you appreciate that this is a factor, and rightfully so, this is a big step in terms of working with somebody on this. Now, we just got through with tax season. Do you do taxes for people?
Oh, I know it. Yeah. So
how does that work?
So for our clients, we keep track their expenses, and we do that because we have to know, because we're monitoring them constantly. If a bill hasn't come in, we know it. We know what they paid last month, and we compare it to this month. To make sure nothing funny is going on. So because we're doing that as we go, at the end of the year, we produce a report for the accountant like that. Boom, and it has everything. It has, medical expenses, if they have charitable contributions, it's all already there because we've been doing it as we go. It's like my mom always was like, if you studied every day after school, you wouldn't have to stay up all night before the test. So there we go.
3 days preparing for the tax person. Yeah.
So by a function of what we do, so we don't actually do taxes. We just prepare all the numbers, collect the tax documents that come in, and get it to the accountant. So it's a relatively, easier process.
Okay. If somebody doesn't have an accountant or they don't like their current accountant, is that something that you can help refer them to a couple of people?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We have a list of trusted people that we've worked with over the years. They can choose anyone they like. Sure.
Great. Because I again, going back to my real estate days, I found that, they did like those referrals from people. And so I always had that kind of, like you said, trusted circle that you all work good together and everyone's reliable and respectable in terms of what they're doing. Are there specific challenges that you've seen in terms of dealing with people with dementia in their daily money management?
So besides the usual, cognitively, they're starting to struggle a bit. It's difficult for them to understand exactly what bills are being paid and why. So there's just a lot more reassurance and explaining that has to be done. Sometimes, like an example was I actually, to file taxes electronically, the accountant often has them sign this form that it's an e-file form. It's just a signature required for them to be allowed to file electronically. And I was with a client and asked him to sign, and he struggled. He couldn't understand the concept, and he was hesitant to sign. He kept reading it. So it's really sometimes it's just a function of patience.
Yeah.
Is the biggest barrier I can see. It's just right. It's going over it, explaining it a few times, and as certainly even better than me, certainly there's better days than others. So sometimes if they really feel strongly against signing something, then we don't. And, nothing's ever forced and we try it another day.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would imagine that people have your phone number to be able to call. So if a person with dementia is worried about something, because sometimes that happens and they've got it in their head that you've taken over, how are you at fielding those calls?
Yeah, we do that quite a bit. And, I'm happy to. It's really what we do. The bill paying is not the most important thing we do. The most important thing we do is give people peace of mind. That's really what the whole business is about. So, and that's a huge part of it. So if a phone call and us saying, yes, Mr. Smith, I can see right here, we paid your electric bill, everything's up to date. And then he gets off the phone and it's all he needed. So we're happy to do it.
Oh, that's nice. Cause I know some people don't want to go that level. I've and I'll use some financial planners, for example. I had done some training and they were like, I'm not a counselor. That's not my job. This is what I do, but I'm not there to pamper and please somebody all the time and answer their questions. This is what I do. And then I had other ones that were like, absolutely, that's what I'm in here for. I know this is a need. And so it's really finding that fit. And so I think if people are interviewing, money managers, that's a question that they really need to be able to ask, can we call? Are you comfortable with that? How are you going to?
That's a fantastic question. I've never been asked that, outright like that. It's a fantastic question.
And, somebody might say they're okay, but you can tell when they're not by their nonverbals and just tone of voice sometimes, or hesitation in answering things. And it just, my conversation with you, I have to say, Emily, I would trust you. I mean, just you're looking straight ahead. You don't have any hesitation. You've got a smile. I mean, your business and your needs. That's the feel that I get from you. And
thank you. I do. I love it. I love it. I do. I wake up every morning and I used to, when I was working at I worked at an investment bank for many years, and And I'd hear about these people that, you don't work if you love it or whatever it was. And I'd be like, I don't know what that. And I've reached it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, work doesn't feel like work when you love what you do. What about, do you run into clients? Because again, this is another scenario I've heard over the years multiple times where they go to the bank and they start pulling cash out. Because they always just, back in the day, and to me, it's not like this at all anymore. I don't feel like I know anybody in my bank because I do everything online. But that was part of their routine, was going in and meeting with somebody, maybe having a cup of coffee and donut when they were there. I mean, it was a very personal event. And so I've heard for some elders that they like going to the bank just to take money out, but they're really not doing anything with the money. It's just the whole transaction. And then I've heard where families found stashes of cash, at home, just sitting there. Is that something that you monitor and look for in terms of habits?
So, right, absolutely. And I try to, if that's their routine and they love that, I'm all for, as much as possible, trying to keep their routines going. So I set up alerts.
Mm-hmm.
We set up alerts on their credit cards and on their banks.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if we're the only ones paying their bills, there should be nothing happening that we don't know about. And that's also part of monitoring for scams and anything unusual. So I literally know the moment my client takes out money, I get an alert. And so we know. And in some cases where someone's taking out a lot of money, you can actually become a power of attorney on an individual bank account. So not a general power of attorney, but just on their one account. And in some situations, we do that. So we have no ownership of the funds, but we're allowed to ask questions and that sort of thing. And then some banks where that was really a problem, when someone would come in to take out they were taking out large sums of money. They would contact me first.
Okay. Well, yeah, because you don't want someone getting mugged or something after they've taken that money out too.
Yeah, they don't need to be walking around with thousands of dollars of cash.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I would think if that's their habit in terms of taking money out, and just even if they pile it up in the house, if you run across that going, it's time to deposit that money you've collected now.
Exactly right. You just stick it back and go through the whole routine again. Yeah.
Yep. Live in their world. This is amazing. Are there any tips that you have for people in terms of scams? I mean, I just think that they're so hard to get a handle of because they're always coming up with something new. It seems like constantly.
I'm telling you, they're brilliant. Some of the stuff I read, it's brilliant what they come up with. So here's what it is. So you can't prevent scams. You can try to minimize them. It's like you don't want to get sick, so you wash your hands a lot. Maybe you sneeze into your sleeve, and you don't, you do little things to minimize it, but no one can guarantee you're never going to get sick. So with that, there's stuff you can do to try to minimize it. So you can freeze the credit. You can put freezes on the credit, so that can't be opened. A huge thing are the alerts. You get notifications immediately if there's a credit card charge, and you know it right away. You can stop that. The mail, any place that the scammer comes in, we have clients who, and they're finally comfortable with it. They're willing to let us hold their checkbook, so they're not writing checks anymore. There's actually a credit card that we've used a few times. It's called TrueLink, and it's a prepaid credit card. And before anything goes through, they send if a charge is attempted, they send a notification to the administrator on the account, which we are, and you can give permission, or you could say no. So it's kind of like a control credit card, watching and limiting in that way. And then if someone is scammed, it's just a matter of catching it as soon as possible before it just gets out of control. If you catch it quickly, usually nowadays, the one advantage of scams being so prevalent is that every place has like a fraud department now. It used to be back in the day, they didn't know where to send you their right? They don't know what to do with it. And now you just call up, it's like option 4, fraud department, and boom, it's like it's you have the new credit card, a couple days later, or you have, or the bank account is, frozen it and refunded your money and whatever it is. So it's a matter of doing a little prevention that you can, and watching is a big part of it.
Yeah, I know for me, I've been scammed. Somebody got a hold of my credit card and they were ordering a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was from vitamins to jewelry and purses and pillows. And I it just went on and on. And the weird part was it all came to my house. But I didn't order any of it. And I'm like, what is all this? And, so I called the police and called the credit card company. They're like, oh yeah, that's the new scam. They deliver it to your house. They monitor when it's going to be there and they're going to come pick it up. But I have cameras on my outside of my house. So with signs. So I think that no one came to pick them up. And, but what a pain in the butt, because then you have to file each, because they were all different transactions with different things. And, it's just such a hassle. So you handle all of that kind of stuff too?
Right.
Oh, that alone's worth it.
The credit cards, my big hit with the credit cards is, and this is for everyone, right? People have like a ton of credit cards. If you could, all the stuff that I have automatically coming off of my credit card, my gym membership, my cell phone, all my stuff, that credit card stays in my drawer at home. I don't use that credit card. The credit card that I use every day when I go to the store and whatnot. So when the store comes back and says, oh, you were compromised, or whatever happens if someone gets that card, I can just cancel it, boom, and get the new one without having to redo all those automatic charges.
Oh, that's smart.
So, I mean, not to say it's not necessarily 100%, anything you get scammed, but that one that stays in my drawer. So when one is compromised, it's a little less of an ordeal. But yes, we've had to do that. Someone's compromised, you have to call up all those places and give the new credit card number.
Well, and then I like that too. And I haven't done that, where putting those types of charges on a credit card, I usually have them come out of my bank, but then that makes me more susceptible, I would imagine.
Oh, that's interesting. Or, yeah, well, credit cards, if it's a scam, you usually get a credit card will reimburse you. Banks tend to be a little more strict. It depends on the bank. Yeah, I found in my dealings, it's a little quicker for a credit card to reimburse you. So yeah, and credit cards, you get points. So
yeah. Well, when you said that, I'm like, well, that's smart. I hadn't thought of that. What are some steps that people can take to protect their loved ones, just as a whole? And I would imagine that you do like a free consultation with people to meet and kind of chat about this.
Right. So absolutely. So that's where the face-to-face comes in, because it's a service that they're not necessarily familiar with. And yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's about communication, like you said. It's the constant communication and being able to watch all the stuff that's going on. It's hard protecting someone, it's a tricky thing. I mean, it's hard. You spend a lot of energy protecting yourself, financially. And so it really is, it's just a matter of, and it takes time. So, it's more time on the family member or the relation that is keeping in touch, or it's bringing in someone that can assist, and help along with that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, and I think just the information that you have, the experience, like I'll use an example of some other friends of mine whose dad had a wonderful business. So he was very business savvy, and he always, did his own trading and things like that. Well, I guess at first he was with somebody, and then they kind of cut that off. So then he decided to day trade himself, and he was dealing with some dementia, and then they got a handle on that. And, then he started just going to the bank directly and doing some things, and they got a handle on that. And the car ended up getting taken away because he wasn't really safe to drive. Well, then he took an Uber. I mean, he was just, when they told me the stories, I was just fascinated. I'm like, this man is so flippin' savvy at workarounds. And they were just exhausted. They were like, oh my God, we didn't think of that. We didn't have, we didn't see big picture. They were just putting out those fires. And I would imagine someone
Totally.
with you could talk with the family and say, this is kind of common on how this is going to work, especially if someone is very business savvy, has been all their life.
That is hysterical. I do have some clients, and it's so funny. It's like in some way you shake your head, and I get such a kick out of them. They are so resourceful. They're right. You are literally just, they will not take no. They leave the house and they do all this stuff and they work around you, and it's a riot. I mean, it's you can't, there's only so much you can do. You can't lock someone down and take away everything, because then what's their quality of life?
Yeah.
You have to do this. It's this very precarious balance of, I've had the children be like, take away all their money. They can't have their money anymore. And I argue for them. I say, we could try to limit it, but you can't take away their money. Like that's who
they are. That's their pride.
You have to weigh. Yeah, the scam phone calls. They were like, change his phone, take away his phone, and I'm like, you can't do that. It's putting up with inconvenience to let them continue to live the enjoyable part of their life.
Yeah. And it's about dignity, and it's about realizing it is their money, and
exactly. There's no right. You can't stop someone. It's not against the law to make a bad decision.
Yeah. I remember my dad had brain cancer, and he did really, really well. But, at the end, he wasn't as savvy with his money, and I would go with him to their financial planner. And one day he made a decision that I didn't really think was valid or in his best interest, and neither did the financial planner. And the financial planner just looked at me like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, it's his decision. It wasn't going to break them, but it was really, really important to my dad. And for him to maintain that dignity, that was key. And I know that there's probably a lot of listeners going, well, you were a rotten daughter. You weren't looking out in their best interest. I said, there's a lot of levels of best interest, guys.
Exactly.
There's a lot of levels. And you have to take.
I think that was great that you did that, right? To be able to weigh, it's kind of like a pick your battles kind of thing. And very much part of their dignity. So you were good for you.
Yeah. And it's it's a hard decision, but again, you have to look at big picture, and you have to look at healthy lifestyle for them, and even the will to live and feel like they're still in control. They've got to have some leverage, and it really is about working on, in my mindset, their abilities. And even if they're diminished a little bit, that doesn't mean they're gone by any stretch.
Exactly.
And just because they didn't agree with me today, well, hell, let me look back in history. They didn't agree with me a lot of times, and their life went on just perfectly fine, but people don't look at it in that light, that it's okay to have differences of opinions and stuff. But it is about the overall protection of not just finances, but quality of life. And
that how slowly they say the child slowly becomes the parent. They do a little switch. I mean, that's not just like overnight a switch. It's just this very gradual decision-making process. And like when you parent your child, it's not black and white. Sometimes you got to let them, do their own thing and
make that mistake and go, and don't say, I told you so, just zip the lip. And it's a learning lesson. And I would imagine that happens in these cases sometimes too.
Exactly.
And, if you just rip the Band-Aid off and try to take over everything, I mean, I've seen families where they've written people out of wills and just said, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't trust you as a son or a daughter anymore. because of those situations. And I don't think people always look at the ramifications of how they're coming off. I think they, for the most part, think that they really are trying to protect, but I don't think they've gone inward of how would I feel if that was me? How would I want to be treated in that situation? And I think that's a big question people need to ask themselves. Well, anything that we haven't covered, this has been a great conversation.
I really enjoyed it. No, I think we covered everything. Another service that that people know exists, something to think about down the road.
Oh, I just thought of one. You know, we talked about personally meeting and stuff. So where are you located, and can you manage people's finances that maybe aren't in your state or locally, if they're comfortable, you know, doing everything online?
Yes, so great question. So we're in New Jersey. And so for in-person visits, it would have to be local, but we do have clients in many states around the United States. Nowadays, we can bills come in electronically, we pay them electronically, communicate electronically. So clients can really be anywhere at this point.
Okay. And then knowing me, I just thought of another one. So do you send out like quarterly reports in terms of where things are at, or is each family a little bit different, or each person a little bit different in terms of what they want, or monthly or annually, or how does that work?
It's totally it differs. It totally by what people want. We absolutely have people that we send, they want monthly reports, and they want monthly reports sent to maybe a child or a power of attorney. Some people want quarterly, annual, everything you just named. Yep, we totally tailor it to what makes them most comfortable.
Oh, I just think this is such a wonderful concept. And I have seen the need for this for so many years, and so many individuals and families struggling, you know, with doing this. And a lot of times I found, even within the family, if someone tries to take it over, other siblings don't trust for whatever reason. And they've always trusted, they've always gotten along. And then all of a sudden it just blows the family up. And I think that needs to be weighed in too, that a lot of times a third party can really be extremely helpful in terms of taking these roles over for people, because it is such a touchy subject.
Money, it really is. Yes.
Well, people can get a hold of Emily at Liberty Paperwork Solutions by just going to libertypaperworksolutions.com. And you can email her at emily@libertypws.com, or you can call her at 973-500-4500. And then also she's on LinkedIn. You can find her there at Emily Lutz. So again, thank you so much for the work that you do, and the respect and, you know, the thought you put in to your work. I mean, your compassion and passion for what you do really shows. And to me, that just means so very much. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you, really. Thank you.
I appreciate your time today. For our listeners, please like, click, and share. Pass this information on, because you don't always know who's dealing with this, because this is not a topic people like to share, even within their intimate circle, let alone with their friends. So pass it along and educate people that this is even available. You know, the more resources we have, the better off we all are. So thanks, everybody. Till next time. Bye now.